Dead Children's Playground. Let me tell you a story of the famous Dead Children's Playground in my town. An old playground that has been a staple in my town for as long as I could remember. I recall being 5 or 6 and sliding down on the many twisty slides and climbing up a plastic rock wall. Many kids played here, and for a small town like mine, it was often a social gathering for kids of all ages. Toddlers played during the day while rebellious teens made their way to the swings at dusk to smoke cigarettes and fool around. The playground was nestled in a little clearing in the woods down a dirt path, deep in the brush. A luscious stream flowed around the perimeter, teeming with tiny fish and frogs. The playground had its central play area, a long wooden platform of different levels, metal and plastic sides, different poles to slide down, a rock wall, monkey bars, and my favorite, the rickety jumping bridge. A couple of swings lined the base of the tree line near the stream's bank, and a lone water fountain off to the side. The water fountain has particular horror to me, as one of my earliest memories is running headfirst into the green metal base and turning my front tooth black as it decayed. Now, over the years, the playground has gone from one that was teeming with laughter and joy to one that is quite sad. A string of deaths littered the town over the years, often associated with the playground. Instead of its vibrant aura, the playground is now desolate, overtaken by nature, and downright dangerous. The rusty metal of the slides are sharp and jagged, that's packed with tetanus. The swings are barely hanging by their rusty chains, and my favorite rickety bridge has eroded away where rusty nails protrude from the wood. Stories arose from townsfolk that the children that died over the past years haven't left us, that they inhabit the rundown playground. While reports are very common over the years, I have only had one experience that has left me pretty terrified that I don't think I'd go back. Now, we have dubbed what the locals call as the Dead Children's Playground. Mikey Wilhelm was the first one to die that I remember. I was in the 3rd grade, and Mikey was a tiny kid with chocolate brown hair cut in a neat little bowl cut that bounced with every move. He was a nice boy. I remember playing with him and my friend Chelsea often later in the afternoon at the playground when it was less crowded. Safe to say, Mother was not happy to take me in the summer as the sun went down and the mosquitoes feasted. Mother told me in the child version that Mikey had passed on one weekend. Strange, because I just saw him at the park a few days prior. I didn't press on. I remember just trying to comprehend what death was. When I was older and found out that he was found hanging from the swing set, I felt pretty sick that my mother would let me continue swinging on those swings when Mikey had hung from the beam right above me. Then, Teresa Espinoza died. I was in the 4th grade. Teresa was a shy girl, still had some of her baby fat, and had thick brown hair that went way down her back almost to her butt. She wore a frayed red bandana in her hair. I always thought she was pretty cute, especially in the summer when her face was speckled with freckles. It was August, a hot day in the summer where the one metal slide would burn your butt if your shorts weren't long enough. I slid down and crashed my landing, the burning metal stinging my lower thighs. The wind was knocked out of me when Teresa came sailing down. We lay there tangled together for a few moments, staring at each other. I felt a weird sensation in my stomach before running off, leaving her in the dust cloud as it settled. Just as quick as we crashed into one another, Teresa was gone. Like before, my mother gave me the children version that Teresa had passed on. What do you mean passed on? I pressed my mother that morning. Oh, nothing, dearie. Teresa is in heaven now, my mother reassured me. Like Grandma is? I questioned. Yes, sweetheart, like Grandma. And with that, my memory of Teresa began to vanish. Like Mikey, when I was older surfing the web, the article about Teresa's death popped up on my search. Teresa was taken to the park by her father, a notorious drunk in my town. They suspected that he abused her, evidenced by her little girl underwear thrown about in the park by the slide. Teresa was found floating in the little creek behind the park, tangled up in a mess of weeds and leaves. Her body was slightly bloated and reeked when the authorities finally found her. Her father was the main suspect, and he was arrested a few days later, drowned by her own father. Her family was torn apart. Now, as I am sitting here writing this, as a 24-year-old woman, those are the deaths that stand out to me, but they are not the only ones. It seemed year after year at that point that some kid was dying at the park or near the park. After the 5th or 6th one, less and less people started going to the park and its maintenance went under. I wonder if the state was trying to deter people from going by not upkeeping its maintenance. After years of desolation and avoidance of the townsfolk, only the most daring, and at times being high schoolers, would venture to the playground. This is where the ghost stories started and Dead Children's Playground was birthed. Rumors were being spread that swings would start swinging on their own, that footsteps could be heard running along the rickety bridge. Laughter of little kids could be heard from somewhere in the woods, the worst one being the wet slaps of feet walking along the woods, many suspecting being the ghost of Teresa, restless after her father drowned her. I first went there about a year ago, after not having been back since Teresa was first drowned. My mother was always always saying how dangerous it was, but that didn't stop me. I went with my first college girlfriend. We were walking around town late at night. The stars were high in the sky. I love living in a small country town. It doesn't take long before you're lost in the woods somewhere away from the rest of the world. Very peaceful, quiet. As we walked, we reached the old dirt path that lead to the playground. When I first saw it, all the good memories flooded back to me. Endless summers racing along the massive structure with my friends. I excitedly grabbed Emily's hand and raced down the path towards the clearing of the playground. The playground looked a lot smaller as an adult. Vegetation had really overgrown on the equipment. The moon rose high in the sky, reflecting off the metal slides that weren't rusted to hell. We sat cautiously on the swings that were still intact and talked more about whatever nonsense we were thinking. My mind hadn't even registered about little Mikey hanging from a noose right over my head years prior. We talked for hours. The sounds of crickets and other insects forming an orchestra in the deep woods that surrounded us. We talked about the story of me hitting my face into the water fountain, killing me tooth. Then, we started talking about the deaths, all the deaths and all the ghost rumors. I started feeling a little uneasy at that point. All the nostalgia was rushing out of me and being replaced with the dread that now defines this place. While we nervously tried to change the subject, Emily's head shot on a swivel towards the woods. "Did you hear that?" she nervously asked. I tried to concentrate. I could focus on the running water of the stream. "No." "What did you hear?" I asked. "Sounded like footsteps. Could have just been an animal though," Emily assured herself. "Probably," I shakily responded. I kicked off a little and pushed myself swinging in the air. A few more minutes went by of silence while Emily scanned the area. The ghost stories really seemed to be getting to her. I could see the fear rising in her. "There it is again," Emily shouted, standing up from the swing. I tried stopping myself short on the swing. What was it?" "There's someone out there," Emily shouted. "Is anyone out there? Hey, anyone home?" Before she could get another word out, she was cut off by a creaky turning of the water fountain turning on. "What the hell is that?" Emily questioned, her water eyes reflecting anxiety in the moonlight. The water fountain rushed on, water spilling out from the sides of the tiny bowl. We both stood close to each other. I could smell the fear on her. Was that fear or was that the sewage smell of the creek? The footsteps got louder, tiny and muffled as they emerged from the darkness of the woods. We called out again. No answer. The footsteps got louder. The water fountain flowed on, water spilling everywhere. Before we raced out of the playground, never to come back. The footsteps stopped. We looked around, watched the water fountain turn off. The last of the overflowing water spilled over. The woods went quiet, not a sound to be heard. The eerie stillness flooded into me, feeling like someone was watching us. A child's laugh squealed behind us. We both froze in place, slowly trying to turn around and fight the urge to run. When I finally braced myself, I turned towards the woods, where she stood as my blood ran cold. Teresa Espinosa stood at the base of the tree line. Her thick brown hair was wet, filled with twigs and leaves. Her face was pale, her eyes blue and glazed over. A sick smile twisted across her face, her baby teeth shaped like tiny daggers. All the hairs on my body were standing erect. I could feel Emily trembling next to me. She raised her hand. Her skin was sagging off and covered in debris. She pointed towards me. Little water bugs traced along her face. She opened her mouth, where thick black sludge ran down her chin. I grabbed Emily's hand and darted towards the dirt path back onto the main road, her little girly laugh growing louder from behind us. We raced home that night, not talking about what we saw. Emily shot down any attempt to speak about it and we broke up a few months later, never to hear from her again. After that summer, I never returned to Dead Children's Park. I did reach out to a few of my friends recently from home to see if they have any stories about the playground. I will update if I hear anything from them.